Hello, this is John Spink. I'm the director of the Food Fraud Initiative at Michigan State University and an assistant professor in the College of Veterinary Medicine and Food Safety. This is my presentation for the IFT Annual Conference 2017, June 27th, 2017, and this is my presentation on food forensics, scientific investigation of urgent food safety and quality issues. First off, at Michigan State we have a full research group that focuses only on food fraud prevention. That's policy and strategy. We do not do tests. We do not have that type of lab equipment, but we focus on the strategy and the decision making, as you'll see in this presentation. First off, curriculum. We have a wide range of opportunities and activities that can support you. First, a massive open online course. This is free, open online to anyone. We have a basic version that's an overview offered mid-May and mid-November, and we have a food fraud audit guide MOOC that's offered 3 times a year at this point. And the next session, the live session, starts actually in just a couple weeks, July 6th and July 13th. So that's something you can participate in if you need more information. Also, feel free to forward the information of the MOOC to anybody. We have near infinite capacity. We also conduct executive education, which would be on food fraud strategy, quantifying food risk, vulnerability assessments. These are conducted at Michigan State or on site or around the world. These are shorter, about 1-week sessions. We have graduate courses. There's 5 that deal directly with food fraud in one way or another, and these are all online. We're an online graduate program. These are real Michigan State graduate courses, 3 credits, but they are offered online. So if you travel or if you live around the world, not in Michigan, then you can take these courses. If you take a couple of the courses and things are working out for you, after 4 courses you can receive a certificate in food fraud prevention. This is where we state that we believe that there's a foundation of information and knowledge that will help you be a knowledgeable food fraud professional. And a Master's of Science in Food Safety. If these credits are working out for you, you can roll this into a real Michigan State University MS in Food Safety. It happens to all be offered online. And I'd like to point out again, the MOOC is coming up just shortly, so interesting opportunity for you. To look at food forensics, first we've got to consider the basics. Now, one thing is criminology and forensic science has been around for a long time. So we as food scientists, we're not inventing something new. And that's a real key for us to use the expertise of the people that came before us. Before conducting any test, let me emphasize any. Before conducting any test, you need to know what to look for. Are you looking for melamine, or are you looking for species swapping? And you might look for melamine, but what if there's another type of issue in there? For the meat, if you were testing for melamine, you would never found the species. In what quantity? This is a real key. Sometimes fraud is conducted above 20%, sometimes it's below 1%, but there usually is an economic balance where below which the fraudsters will not conduct their act. It's not worth it enough to set up the fraud. Many times that's in the percents, not in the parts per million or parts per billion. A lot of the tests that we have when we're looking for something like foodborne illnesses are very, very precise. Actually, sometimes orders of magnitude or several orders of magnitude more specific than we need. Where to test? So where do the bad guys conduct the fraud? Is it in your plant, out of your plant? Is it only in Michigan? Is it only in Indiana? Well, if fraud is occurring in Michigan, you wouldn't go test in Indiana. And taking a sample of product in Indiana would not help you understand the fraud in Michigan. What do you expect to find? So you need to understand what you're going to do with it, and then also just think through the process, because the bad guys also are probably thinking farther ahead. The threat of physical violence. You know, this sounds like kind of a joke or whatever, but think about this, is that if you send your food inspectors in to do samples of whatever ingredient at a supplier, if they're conducting fraud, this is a crime scene, and this is a criminal investigation, and criminals often respond with physical violence. So this is something that I don't think many of your food safety professionals are trained for, and I would say that you better check if your insurance covers against this as well. You're walking into a criminal operation to gather evidence of a crime. Also, what's the risk of what else you might find? If you go looking for melamine, you might find something else. And sometimes we see that there's suspicious behavior, but suspicious does not mean it's bad, illegal, unfit for commerce. And we'll cover that in the very last slide here. But you need to understand the big picture. This is not traditional forensic food investigations for foodborne illnesses. This is very different. This is one of my favorite slides. Counterfeiters attend anti-counterfeit conferences. So it would be illogical for fraudsters to not be reviewing this presentation and to be attending IFT, because they're going to come here and investigate and research what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how they might get caught. So the key there is, let's use it. If we know that they're going to come and they're going to try to look. Now, we're not going to reveal everything, but we can use this as a communication tool to them, to warn them that we are organized and you have a process, and there's a good chance that they'll get caught. Defining food fraud. I feel like I need to do this for every slide or every presentation. This is real quick. Food fraud is illegal deception using food for economic gain. Now, this is the broad definition of food fraud, and it's really the one that's widely adopted. Now, there's some confusion sometimes because the FDA in the U.S. Defined the subcategory of economically motivated adulteration. Beyond being a mouthful, this has been defined precisely by FDA as a substance for economic gain in food. So a substance that would not be stolen goods, that would not be counterfeits. It would be a substance added to that product. Now later, the phrase EMA or economically motivated adulteration has been used widely, but that's not the subject of this presentation. But for really the overview, food fraud is illegal deception using food for economic gain, using any type of deception, any type of fraud. The motivation is the economic gain. Now defines exactly why it's different than food defense. A food defense motivation is traditionally or harm or terror. The bad guys are trying to harm someone else. The effect of food fraud, there's always an economic threat, but there's not always a public health threat. But there is always a public health vulnerability, because the bad guys, they may be mishandling the product. You can't confirm it. And if you look back at the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act adulterated food section, if that product has been out of your control, that's considered adulterated foods. Again, a subject for a different presentation. There's a lot of examples of food fraud. Feel free to use this slide, screenshot it, whatever. This is one simple slide to explain food fraud to anybody that you need to. Nigeria example. So to look at the food forensics, we're looking at the methods to understand and assess the types of food fraud incidents. That's before we start to do tests. And really the big thing that we focused on is the chemistry of the crime. This is situational crime prevention. It's been studied by crime scientists since the mid-70s, literally thousands of articles, research, applications, case studies. It really works and it's really efficient. What we did is we reviewed this for the Nigerian Combating Counterfeit Medicines initiatives. This is when we were working more broadly on all types of products. It's published in an academic article. And we really look at the crime triangle. And it's got victims, fraudsters, and guardian and hurdle gaps. These are the three sides of this crime triangle. And here's what it looks like. Environmental criminology is the space of crime, not sustainability. Traditional criminology is studying more of the criminal itself, the offender and helping them to not commit future crimes. And in the middle here is a crime triangle, and we call it the fraud opportunity because it's applied to us. That one side is the victims, then the fraudsters, and the guardian and hurdle gaps. And the guardian and hurdle gaps is the leg that we can really work on as industry, as academics, and as those of us all working together with agencies. So this is the application that we conducted for Nigeria. And the key is that the Nigerians didn't use this process to decide on their countermeasures, but it just happened that they took such a holistic view that what they did happened to fall all the way around the fraud opportunity. And this is something that we've been told the Nigerians are using to understand their fraud opportunity even more. On one side, upper left, you've got product authentication, so ways to authenticate the product. This is really authenticating the package. Things like scratch off barcodes, things like that. But they also have they actually do test the product itself, handheld Raman spectroscopy, things like that. Upper right, consumer serialized codes. This is where the consumers are scratching off a code on a package and entering it on their cell phone for text to get confirmation that it's genuine. On the bottom middle, engaged source economies, they focused on where these counterfeits were coming from. And just by sheer volume in global production, they were coming from India and China. And so they worked with the governments there to try to reduce the amount of product leaving that port. Bottom right, support and strengthen enforcement. So they did do a lot more enforcement, and they had very dedicated, very daring, courageous prosecutors and investigators that put their life at risk, and several had been killed in the operations. Middle left, regulate the supply chain. So they started to put in more formal supply chains, and so you knew that if you received the product outside of those official vendors, then you knew that there probably was a problem. Middle right, retailer product authentication. So when a retailer receives the cases, they could do authentication. Bottom left and final is consumer awareness. The consumers know that there's fraud out there, and they know what they can do to protect themselves. And so having consumers involved is a real key. For food forensics, the key here is there's a method, and there's an example of how to look at the countermeasures and really look at them in relation to how they reduce the fraud opportunity. So look at support and strengthen enforcement. This could be Interpol, Operation Opsin specifically. There's great activity there looking in the marketplace. There's also would be looking at product authentication in the Opsin activity of going into the marketplace and testing product and identifying and pulling that product out of the marketplace. But those are only two actions around the outside of the fraud opportunity. Those countermeasures are not in and of themselves a prevention strategy. They contribute, they're tactics that contribute to a strategy. Incident clustering. So we were dealing with a couple companies, and they were trying to organize this wide range of incidents. If you think about it, counterfeit, stolen goods, tampered, melamine, species, repackaging, a wide range of products. We had trouble trying to organize it. So the question we had was how to organize the incidents, how to prioritize countermeasures. So that's a real key. That's why you want to organize these to really be able to explain where's the real problem here and where's not the problem, because every company doesn't have the same problem. A luxury branded chocolate is very different than bulk milk. Criminology cluster theory. So criminologists have used this either for the space of crime or the types of crime to really understand the incidents. So we use this tried and true theory. We published this in an article, Development of a Product Counterfeiting Clustering Tool. Now, we say product counterfeiting. This again was when we were working on broader topics, but it applies directly to food. And the thing that's interesting about this is that this is working its way to become codified on an international level. So in ISO standard CD, it's a proposed 19564 General Principles for Product Fraud Risk and Countermeasures. This is actually a part of it. This is directly from the standard, the proposed standard that's in the final stages. And one thing is, if you just look at this, all you need to look at is across the top the type of fraudster, the type of product fraud, and the type of organization. So if you look at this, you'll recognize that from incident clustering. This is directly from our article, so it did apply directly. Now what you'll see here is we took a company and we looked at their incidents. Now if you see here where it's clustered, there's a type of criminal. So most of it occupational, were people in their work, some professional criminals, but it was diversion and counterfeiting. Those were the two areas. This group did not have, they had only one incident noted in adulteration, 2 in tampering. So, if you're doing food authenticity testing, that would not apply here. Because in this case with diversion, that they're taking product from one market, genuine product from one market to the other. An authenticity test would just prove that it's genuine. It would not prove that it was fraudulent. Down here in the red, we want to emphasize something to look at, again, is organized crime or crime groups. And this is for real. There are some very big organizations that are involved in food. There's been numerous examples of these rings or cases, and now whether it's direct organized crime operations or organized crime members working, and that's why we call it organized crime members. This is definitely a real issue and something actually subject of a different presentation, but something to definitely consider. This is not E. coli. We are not fighting salmonella. We're not fighting a microbe. These are very intelligent adversaries who have a lot of persuasive methods at their disposal. Finally is our how to investigate. So this is again something to get started that helps to identify what type of tests we need and the quantity of them and things like that. We found that there were some questions about how to investigate suspicious activity, and there's been numerous media reports about incidents or agencies, government agencies, that have released reports of that they have found fraud, that there was suspicious activity, but when we looked closer, several times the incorrect tests were used. So they used an incorrect test and got an incorrect outcome or assumption. What we did is we were looking at this in the paper is what is food fraud and what is investigative journalism. We're working with our Michigan State Journalism School. We're looking at the case studies and investigations gone wrong to develop this FFSAR, we call it, Food Fraud Suspicious Activity Report Method. And again, this is something that's in a draft form of an article, and this one actually is extra credit for our graduate course this semester, is to review and comment on the method. So we're getting this, and it will end up being submitted to a journal for publication. So it will be something that will be peer reviewed and refereed. What we look at with this FFSAR method, and again our working draft, open to any comments, the first thing we ask is about the suspicious activity. What's the concern? The source of information. Is it a lab test or is it a rumor? Source of information, the person, who, what data set. So we want to look closer at that as well. So we look at the details. Date of concern, date of incident. Many times we hear about suspicious activity, but there's not a specific incident. And that's a real key point when we're starting to investigate this crime and conducting the forensic analysis. Ingredients. Are critical ingredients used in the finished product authentic? Are they? So we can look at those details. We're looking at the ingredients themselves, and we're looking at, based on the suspicious activity, what needs to be tested. Supplier. Has the source been vetted and approved? So that's a real key. Did it just come from anybody, or is it someone that you know, someone that's been in business? Processing. Would processing alter any of the critical ingredients where when tested for presence may not be detectable? Denaturation. So there's some times where with some products the authenticity is tested on a raw material. Think aloe vera. So the raw leaf or gel at the start is tested for the authenticity, and then it's processed. And during that product of processing, then things change. So the same test wouldn't work after a product has been manufactured. Formulation. Would other ingredients interfere with the critical ingredients where when tested for presence of may not be detectable? This is a challenge sometimes where, especially if there's something that's there in a small amount, and then if there's another ingredient that's put in. Now this could be masking or concealing. There could be fraud occurring, but also it could be just natural how these ingredients interact with each other. Tampering. Would a consumer or competitor intentionally adulterate the product to make it fraudulent? I mean, why wouldn't at some point a criminal plant evidence on a competitor? I mean, it happens in crime, and this is just an extension of that. Something to consider. Authenticity testing. Is the correct method to confirm the presence of the critical ingredient been selected? Has it been validated? So this is something that we find a big hole in a lot of the reports, accusations, suspicious activity reporting, is that there's not a definition of the method that people used, the sampling method, the process used, and was it validated, and then was the result verified? So what we've got here is this is not to undermine or suppress people from doing tests and activities and revealing information. It's just or incidents, it's just getting the information out there. So having the right information, then these are things that we can really understand. And already it's starting to make an impact on some of the situations we've worked with. There's a lot of things we have at Michigan State. Please feel free to contact us. All this information is online. This video will be posted on YouTube, so for free and open access. A lot of people to thank. I'm so thankful for so many people, and some of the people here at the IFT conference and IFT itself have been really excellent. So thank you, so many people. With that, we'll open for discussion, and let me also point out that there's a lot of activity on our website, a lot of content, so feel free to use that.